And good evening, everyone. ESS, Empire State Sports, proudly presents this Wise Guy Sports Talk Show. Your host tonight, Joey Ream, Dave Bartlett, and myself, Pete Goslaw. And our very special guest, uh, so many things I could say about this man, Ed Jacob. Ed, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, wise guys. I've tuned in. I did a little bit of my due diligence on your show, and I think Joey had said that it's a reboot, right? This is a reboot for you
Yep,
guys coming back on. And
yep.
I've got a little bit of experience with some of these podcasts. For 2 years down here, we did the Salt and Pepper Sports Show with my best friend growing up and Syracuse legend Dale Shackelford. So,
Oh
um,
yeah.
it's not easy, but we did 52 shows, and we had guests from Coach K to Bayheim to Welsh to oh my God, Tobin Anderson. We actually got the Final Four run he did. We actually got him before CBS did. And Dusty May down here, which was at FAU at the time. Now he's at Michigan. So I know it's not easy. One of the things I learned is you got to be consistent. If you want to have some success with the podcast. So, all the best to you guys. And, it's not easy.
Well, we've been doing it for a while. We started off doing this at a bar, believe it or not.
Hey,
And
On a
everything
on a
starts at a bar, right?
on a
everything does.
on a
Hey,
on a cassette recorder.
That's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Many
that's
moons
great.
ago. But we move forward on that. So, Ed, little bit about your background. The three of us are North Country bums. We are from the North Country in Northern New York. We always went to the Mecca, Potsdam State. We all went to basketball, school there, the camps and everything. And we watched all you guys. You guys were actually our heroes growing up because you guys were the closest things to like the NBA to us, as
Big
far as
time,
I'm
yeah.
concerned. Yeah. And just watching all you guys, I mean, Roland, you, and I mean, I could just name it off and just roll off the roster. But I'm sure you got more stories to tell than we can actually ask you about. So I'm going to let you roll with a few. How's that?
Well, I could, do you want this, if you want this show to go viral and you want the most views, my dad used to say, my dad was a basketball coach back in Utica, New York, actually New York Mills, New York. He coached in the CYO League, which at the time was 18 teams, and they all fed to Utica, Notre Dame, which is where I went. And Stevie Babiars went there. Leroy Weatherspoon went there. Dale Shackelford went there. So, it was a big league feeder system. And, my dad was a successful player and coach. And he always used to tell me, when you're coaching your son, he goes, everybody's going to have, everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but they're not entitled to their own facts. Right. So, he said, go out there and do what you do where, they can have an opinion, but they can't dispute what you've accomplished or what you did. So that always, stuck with me. And, yeah, I got stories to tell. And, the young Thundercats today talk about bringing the receipts. I think that's what they use the term. I got a lot of receipts I could bring. So, I'm open to anything you want to talk about Potsdam basketball. I can tell you how I got there. How that recruiting process went with Jerry. And, when I met Derek, I mean, if you want to go down that line, I could talk to you about that. But my dad actually coached a couple players. One, Paul Petrowski, who went to Syracuse. This was in the late 60s, early 70s. And the other, it was kind of his protege because he had lost his father real early. And my God, I probably was 4 years old at the time. But Joe Topa, who played for Potsdam. I don't know if that name rings a bell. I think he had played for before Jerry. Who was the coach before Jerry? But anyways,
Was there one?
Yeah, really.
yeah, there was. I mean,
Oh yeah, I know.
Jerry Jerry didn't get off to the best of starts.
No.
Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But long story short, my dream, went to Utica, Notre Dame as a sophomore. At the time, you couldn't make varsity as a freshman. It was a Central United League rule. You could be brought up. I think, for the last 4 or 5 games, once the season ended for sectionals or whatever. But, from my sophomore year on, I was the point guard at Utica Notre Dame, and probably, and one of the things I take pride in, I'm all about winning, that's what my father instilled in me. It's harder to get rings than points, so to speak. So being the point guard, being the quarterback of the team, my deal was always winning. So one of the things I'm proud about is my 4 years in high school, my 4 years in Potsdam. I never lost the league or conference title, regular season title, which is 8 seasons. Really, I'm really proud of that fact. But like I said, and even God, even in pickup games and playgrounds back then, there was really no AAU. It was just always about winning. And but really, my biggest win was as a sophomore in high school. We beat DeMatha and Morgan Wooten in front of 5,000 plus at the Utica Auditorium, and they were unofficially ranked #1 in the country. We beat them good too. We beat them by 15 points, and that probably was the greatest win in the school. Still is the greatest win in the school history. Utica Notre Dame, I don't know if you know, has a deep tradition.
Yep.
And the unfathomable happened. I don't know if you guys keep up with stuff a little bit downstate, but they didn't have a basketball team this year, which for people my age is just unheard of based on what we did back then. But beating DeMatha, and they had, I think, 3 or 4 NBA players: Charles Hawkeye Whitney, Kenny Carr, Peter Strickland. That was pretty cool. So I started to get on the radar of some college coaches, a lot of Ivy Leagues. But growing up, I used to go to the College Hill, which is at Hamilton College in Clinton, New York. That was like a 5 or 6 miles. So I kind of was brought up on Hamilton College, Tom Murphy basketball. I really didn't know Jerry Welsh, to be honest with you. And I only knew Potsdam from, like I said, Joe Topa, who had played for my dad in grade school. And, needless to say, Murphy at the time, they had Cedric Oliver, who I competed against. He went to Utica Proctor. And Cedric went to Hamilton, was a 3-time All-American and Player of the Year. He got drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. Him and Dale were big rivalries in high school. But John Clawberg, Mark Badger, these are names that come to my mind that were All-Americans at Hamilton that I used to see all the time. So, needless to say, Murph recruited me, Spartano recruited me at Utica. And then somehow Jerry got my name, and, basically he was relentless. And Coach K, when he was at West Point, he made a visit, and, I really wasn't educated about the 5-year commitment, to a military institution. So, that didn't last very long, but that was pretty cool. That was his first job. He played for Bobby Knight there. And then of course that was his first job before he went to Duke. But, Jerry, once he kind of took note, he was down in Utica a lot. I mean, a lot. And I had mentioned this in the documentary. My senior year, he would get out of practice at probably 6:37, drive into 3-hour snowstorm, spend 30 minutes and go back. And he did that multiple times. So obviously my parents fell in love with the guy. As I said, I had a bunch of Ivies, the Maris of the world, but, Jerry did a big selling job. He had been a good politician, that's for sure. Politicians and coaches are interchangeable. They're all full of shit. So, my folks fell in love with him, and he promised my parents 3 things. He said, if your son comes here, number 1, he'll graduate, he'll get his degree. Number 2, I'll make him All-American. And number 3, he's going to lead us to a national championship. And he checked all the boxes. So, he's something else. So that's how I got to Potsdam. My dream school was Syracuse. I wanted to play with Dale Shackelford. He was 2 years older than me. So the succession of Notre Dame folks, that played at Potsdam. How many All-Americans did Jerry have? 9. 3 of them came out of Notre Dame Utica.
Yeah.
and they were multiple, right? It's two-time All-Americans, which I shake my head, once Jerry left, or after Stevie played. I don't think there was a Utica Notre Dame player that went to Potsdam all these years, which, I go in that direction relative to guys like Scott Franco and Bill Perkowski and how they feel about the program today. It's just very disheartening. But anyways, getting kind of back to, that's how I got to Potsdam. And I got to Potsdam. We were in Lehman Hall, I think, on the 4th floor in a corner suite. There were 8 recruits. Derek was there. Scott Franco was there. There was a guy named Mark Cupperno who actually transferred to Oswego with sophomore year and actually ended up playing for Mike Dean. John Mason, Pat Melbourne was in that suite, and a couple other guys. And as the season started, I had made varsity, but Derek was on the JV. All those other guys were on the JV team, but the JV schedule was tough. They played Canton and all the junior schools up there. And Coach K was the coach. My opportunity came. I was probably the first 10 games of my freshman year. I was probably getting 10, 11 minutes a half. I was backing up a guy named Ray Lipscomb. Do you guys know all this? Like, is this before you guys got involved? Or do you remember a guy named Ray Lipscomb?
Ray, I don't remember.
Okay. Ray was really good. So here's the deal. So, if you look at Jerry and Jerry's career and Potsdam's success, the first 4 or 5 years, Jerry was under 500 coaching. Okay. And then he got Mike Dean to transfer. And, during Mike's years, 2 out of the 3 years, they made the NCAAs. Mike won about 72% of the games, but they never won a regional. And back then in 73, they went to 3 divisions, but they still only had 2 tournaments. And it really wasn't defined until 75 where they actually had a D3 tournament. So, I think, when you talk about Mike and Ted Bentz, their big thing was they lost to, what was his name, Marvin Webster at Morgan State in one of those regionals. And then when Mike left, he was a little bit over 500 for the next 3 years, 39 and 33. The year before I got there, they had won the ECAC, which was kind of the NIT, back then, kind of the secondary tournament. But they did beat Hamilton College, and Hamilton at the time wasn't allowed to play in the NCAAs because of their league and their academic rules and rights, something like that, I think. But Hamilton for a lot of that year was, they were like ranked number 1 or number 2. I think it was Cedric Oliver. Was it Cedric Oliver's last year? I don't know. It might have been his last year, but they beat him in the ECAC. And, this is all while, Jerry was recruiting me. So that obviously, made me raise my eyebrows because I followed Hamilton College and it coincided with Jerry recruiting. And then, he was just a good salesman, he was just a really good salesman and he just outworked everybody. But, so the first 10 games, I was Ray Lipscomb's backup. And then, Ray was one of those guys that he went to the service right after high school. And he spent 4 years in the Army, and then he came back. So he played JUCO 1 year, and then he was 24 years old when I was a freshman.
He had been a bit older.
Well, today it's kind of the average player with the nil world, right? I mean, if you think that's a whole nother story. But Ray was a great player. I think he made like second team or honorable mention all SUNYAC. He was really, really good player. Of course, maturity and everything. And I backed him up, and he was very helpful to me. And then I can remember during break, he decided he needed to get a job, I guess, to support his family. So he never came back. And so really from the 11th game of my career, I started and ran the gamut. So when you look at, in the statistics of Potsdam State basketball, it's got, who played the most games, I think I come in second. But if you say who started the most games in their career, nobody's even close. So from the 11th game of my freshman year through my senior year, I think I played in 121 games. I started 110 or 111. And that's how that happened. And at the same and we were, I don't know what our record was. I think we might have been a game over 500, but then we became pretty good, starting in January. And then of course, Derek became a superstar overnight, from January to February of his freshman year. And by the way, him and I left the suite and we went to Knowles and roomed together. That's that second half of the freshman year. And, to say it was competitive, I mean, we'd wake up 1, 2 in the morning. He'd always have these 30-pound dumbbells. We'd do push-ups. There's a guy named Mr. Manette who was the janitor, and we coaxed him into giving a key, and we'd go out to Maxie, at 11, 12 midnight, freezing our ass off, but, we'd just do eye contact, throwing the alley hoop, that kind of stuff. So when people, think about, how we acted in the game, there was a lot of, we spent a lot of time together outside of regular practice and things like that. But so yeah, that freshman year, we won the conference because before, like I said, they were 39 and 33. I got there my freshman year. Derek got there, and then moving forward to the second semester, how we lived together and moving, we moved the needle, so to speak. We won the conference, and we made the regionals up in Stony Brook. And, this is 77, 78. Stony Brook was ranked second in the nation. And we lost to them by 6. It was a close game. We lost to them by 6 points. So this July, they're inducting the 78, 79 team into the Hall of Fame at Potsdam. And, if you look at how we ended our freshman year and the guys coming back, that was really when the Bodacious Bears really became the Bodacious Bears, or was the onset, So, when you watch that documentary, which to a lot of people that played with me, the Derricks and so forth, it should have been in the context of, a documentary of Jerry Welsh, because it really was. It was recognizing Jerry's accomplishments, but you had people on there that played no part in where Potsdam went, and there were some people that took offense to that. I'm not going to say their names or whatever, but those are the facts. I mean, you can't rewrite history. So that team that lost to, and Stony Brook, by the way, went to the Final Four that year, and they lost to North Park. And North Park was on their run of 3 consecutive D3 championships. I don't know if you remember them out of Chicago. And North Park, back then the lines were blurred in the divisions. That year, was it? Yeah, that year North Park. No, it was the year we lost to win the finals, which would have been my sophomore year. But I mean, they were playing DePaul, they were beating Jacksonville, they were beating South Alabama. That's how good North Park of Chicago was back there. So when you talk about dynasties in basketball, to us, to guys that have played in 2 Final Four championship games, the bar is winning a national championship. And when Jerry left somewhere along the line, that no longer became the bar. Now we're here 33, 34 years later. But Stony Brook lost to North Park, I think by 10 that year in the Final Four. And then you had the Fran Demians, the Jack Bassettas, Scott Franco came up from JV. Derek, the end of that freshman year established himself to who he was. Pat Donnelly. So kind of the core of that team that played against Stony Brook in my freshman year in the regionals, came back to 78, 79. And that's when we made the run, I'm rambling here, guys. I don't know if you guys want to touch on any questions.
No, you're doing fine.
You mentioned Pat Donnelly. So Pat's a friend of mine. I live in Old Forge, and Pat and I golf together a lot.
Isn't he on the board at Thundera or something like
He
that?
is. He is. That's my course. Yeah.
Yeah, I in high school I played golf as well, and they had the state championship out there one year. This was like probably in '75, maybe '74. But yeah, I mean that was a little bit 45-minute ride for me up
Yeah.
north. But yeah, Pat. Pat's. I think he bought a house on the West Coast down here. Um, if I remember correctly, I saw him maybe
right,
4 or 5 years ago. Him and Fran Demian lives in Wellington. But my point is, when you look at the '78, '79 season, that team that almost knocked off Stony Brook in the regionals, who had went on to the Final Four, we knew we had something going on, in that regard. And yes, it was a 78, '79, and it wasn't almost like we were surprised. Like we were pretty confident. We were pretty confident.
Only losing 6 points, you guys had to say to yourselves, we should be here. We know we belong here.
So
at that point.
Let me tell you, like, the character of some of those guys. It was all about winning, and I'll give you a case in point. My freshman year, okay, and I led the team in scoring. I led the team in assists. I was ECAC Rookie of the Year, SUNYAC Rookie of the Year, second team All SUNYAC. The next year, as Derek evolved, Derek broke the seasonal scoring record at the time. Okay. When Mo came, okay, and I don't know if you know this, but Jerry recruited me my freshman year. He didn't recruit Derek. You know that story, right? Derek didn't get recruited by Jerry. Stan Heller, Derek's coach, was a friend with Jerry. And he said, hey, I got this guy. He plays soccer and basketball, but I think he can develop. And that's how Derek got there. Okay, so Derek brought Mo. They were friends, right? And I got Leroy there. Jerry didn't know who Leroy was. I don't know if you know that story.
Yeah, we did hear that story.
Okay, so when you look at the net that Derek and I casted, and I could go into like my relationship with Dale Shackelford, and it was almost like, I was the protege of Dale and Leroy was the protege of me. Those summers, and you had the Post Standard, you had the Syracuse, I think it was the Herald Times, Utica had two newspapers. We'd play in the summer after the season, and we'd have people following us around. We'd play at Griffiths Air Force Base, go to Thornton Park on Syracuse campus. And so then when, Dale was 2 years older than me. So when Syracuse, was going to regionals and playing their big games, and then we were doing what we were doing, the visibility and footprint Jerry had now to recruit was ratcheted up. And then you had Derek going to the Albany Patroons right after his playing time. So now you got, if they weren't going to Syracuse, Jerry had a really good shot, at getting that player, right? So there's a lot of things that came from the time we were spent. So I circle back to the bodacious Bears. It really began in '78, '79, and we those years set the table. Would Jerry have gotten the Pony Bullocks, or would Brendan Mitchell have transferred, or the what's his name, Everett Clayton, the guys from Albany? I mean, Derek was a patroon at the time. I'm on the Syracuse campus getting a write up with Dale. I mean, Potsdam was going to national championships. It was like a perfect storm going on for Jerry. So, the bandwidth at that time that he had to go after players with credibility at a high level was really heightened. But getting back to '78, '79, losing to North Park. Here's another thing too. So the argument, how I say everybody's got everybody's entitled to their own opinion, but not their own facts. So you got the Mike Dean and Ted Benz, proponents, and they bring up the Marvin Webster thing, and there were only 2 tournaments. I bet you didn't know this: the 4 out of the starting 5 of North Park, our sophomore year, got drafted in the NBA. More so than they had 4 in 19, whatever that was, 79. Moselle Greer they had 10 rounds back then. Moselle Greer went to Cleveland. Michael Thomas went to Sixers. Michael Harper had a career in the NBA with Portland, and Keith French went to Phoenix. So here, Derek and I are sophomores with Fran and Jack, and we're going against, a team that had won two D3s, and they're going for their 3rd. So when they try to talk about comparing teams in decades and what the divisions were or whatever, it was so blurred back then. We also played against my junior year. We got beat in the Elite 8 by Longwood College. You ever hear of a guy named Jerome Kersey in the NBA?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was a freshman then. I remember Derek telling me, man, these guys are men that would play. It wasn't that they were really, really tall. They just, and we might have played our worst game that year. I think we got beat by 11. That would have been our second, consecutive trip to the Final Four. But that was we've played against some really, really good players. Like I said, it wasn't really defined yet. The D3 tournament initiated in 75. So I remember we'd go to New York and play in the Manhattanville tournament, and you had some people from the Times or the Post, and they'd be covering us, and the opposing coach would say, yeah, we've played Marist and Army and Fordham, and Potsdam State would definitely have their number and so forth. So we had started to cut a pretty good picture of what was happening up there in Potsdam, New York.
Bring us. Now you're going to be bringing us into the '81 season, and you got to tell us a little bit more about that, because it was a great run.
Yeah. Well, the summer started off. I don't want to say it was a tragedy, but it gave us pause. And I don't know if you know this, but Scott Franco had cut off the top of his finger on his shooting hand. I don't know. Do you guys know that? He was doing a summer job mowing, and Scott is 2 things. Scott is and I really wish this documentary, got Scott and Bill Perkars and Pat Melbourne, because they truly played a role in, establishing, the program, at the highest level for a period of time. I wish they, I think the kid did a good job. I don't think the kid was even born. But by the way, do you know how that story happened? I got a call from Tim Dempsey 3-4 years ago, and he said, I remember him, and he was in high school, but I don't remember him. And he introduced himself, and he told me what what his plans were, and he saw the '81 Bulls thing and said, or the Last Dance, and he said, I want to do it on the '81 team. And I said, I think there's a lot of content there. I think you can. And he made me I did a trailer on the beach down here for it. And then when he, I guess you got to go and get a lot of data and information from people at, in the AD department. They were a little reluctant, and then they said, well, let's do it on all the teams for Jerry's. But initially, Tim came to me and said, I want to do it on '81, and that's kind of how that evolved. But '81, yeah, we were all a little bit concerned. I mean, Scott, in my mind, playing with him was the smartest basketball player I ever played, one of the smartest I ever played with, and he was the slowest, fastest basketball player I've ever played with. And what I mean by that is he finished last in sprints 100% of the time. but he's smart enough the way we played. And you know, we ran the Carolina break, right? And secondary break and getting the ball out in 3 seconds and all that stuff. Um, he knew to get, you know, he'd be 1 or 2 steps ahead of his man just from his IQ, where the ball was going, when I was going to get the ball. And he was always ahead of his man. That's why I say he was the slowest, fastest person I ever played with. Um, he's just a really smart player. But yeah, that started with, you know, I got a call from Jerry, and it's like, you know, we got, you know, Scott cut off, you know, I thought initially it was the whole finger on his shooting hand, but it was you know, down to the first, I guess, knuckle or whatever. And so that's how that started. And then we were a little bit, I mean, I'm not gonna be, um, we looked ahead, right? We looked ahead that whole year to get back to the final, because that was our last year. We had a lot of pressure on us, but well, quite honestly, we looked ahead after we'd been there our sophomore year. Um, but we looked ahead. We, you know, we came out really well. We lost 2 games by 1 point that year. One was at St. Lawrence, and that was a game I should not have played, because I think we played them on a Thursday, and that Monday or Tuesday I really tore my hamstring, and this was in mid to late January, and I was wrapped up. We lost by 1 there, and then you know, we lost in the SUNYAC tournament to Albany. We had beaten them 2 times, and we lost to them by a point or two at our place. I don't know if you guys remember that back then. That was the second year. The SUNYAC tournament started in my junior year. I remember going to University of Buffalo, and we beat the University of Buffalo in that championship game. And then, we had played in 3 NCAA regionals going into 80, 81. We'd won a lot of games. The Albany game that we lost in the senior, we just wanted to get it over with. I'll be honest with you, and we just wanted to get back to Rock Island, quite honestly. And we overstepped with Albany, but we did host Clark, and we put a number on Clark. I think we won by 17. And then, we went to Rock Island. We weren't. Here's the deal too. Do you guys know Derek was injured and I was injured. I had injured my ankle against Clark. In fact, they did there's like a big front page. Jacob might not play Friday. And Derek had messed up his, I think it was his hamstring. He was heavily taped. So we played that Final Four injured. We weren't going to say anything, but we weren't 100%. But played her sinus. We weren't in awe. Like, we had been there before, even though Augustana was hosting and it was kind of crazy. I mean, North Park wasn't too far away our sophomore year, so it wasn't as crazy that game. But it was it was packed, and Derek and I'm not sure if Scott. Yeah, I think Scott was there. We got experience. I mean, you can't undervalue experience. So we were there with one mission to win it. People forget about the Ursinus game. You guys remember that game?
Yes.
I'm trying to get video on it, but rightly so. I mean, the iconic shot spoon. Everybody talks about that, and that'll always be in the annals of Potsdam basketball. But we beat Ursinus, who was a great team, I think by 2 points. And they had a guy named Jim Mobley, who was a 2-time All-American, and I had a really good game against them. I think it was 64 to 62 or 62 to 60. And Derek and I combined for 42 points. And
Nice.
yeah, I mean, it was a really, hard, game. And then, we pull up to Augustana, and we just had a lot of, we had a lot of confidence. I just remember, like, I've watched that game, as you can imagine, hundreds of times. And the only, when you look at it that many times, we were extremely successful spreading the floor, right? and in 4 years we never lost a game. If we were up by 6 points with 4 or 6 points with 6 minutes, 5 minutes to go, we never lost. That was we weren't one to sit on the ball. The four corners, we scored. I mean, that's how I got a lot of my assists. That's how they got a lot of points and so forth. But highly successful out of the gates with Augustana. But I think we stayed in it too long, and I think it allowed them. It allowed them to make some adjustments. I think we got a little impatient, and they got back in it. And here's the thing too. Rewatch the game. They were up 6, and then they went up 8 in the second half. Like they closed the gap at halftime, and then they came out the second half and they put a whooping on us. They got up to 8 points, and I think it's at the 14-minute mark. And I didn't have my best shooting game. I had a pretty good first half, but the second half I didn't have a good shooting game. But I made a basket and Derek made a basket, and it they were on a run. They got up by 8, and it brought it back down to a 4-point game, which it remained like that, and as we got into 7-8 minutes. But that people don't talk about that. Derek and I do, obviously, but that was a really critical point because they could have went double digits, but it got missed in a lot of this stuff as the game unfolded. But it was everything that you can imagine, and it set Jerry's career going forward. Well, 78, 79 set Jerry's career going forward, and then it laid the foundation right after that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it's kind of a FedEx version. Get into crazy stories about the 81 draft. Larry Brown screwed me. You want to hear that story?
Yeah.
Sure.
So
I'm sure it's got to be a doozy. Yeah.
Well, Larry Brown was coaching UCLA. Do you remember that?
Yep.
He was coaching UCLA, and the NBA at the time had a pre-draft camp in Chicago. That was like the big, you had to get invited to it and so forth, right? Well, the 81 year, the year I graduated, they had an additional camp, and it was in St. Peter's College in Jersey City. And, Derek was there. You had Frankie Johnson from Wake Forest. Remember him? He went to Phoenix. Eddie Moss from Syracuse. And I attended. And I had a really good camp. Tons of European teams were there. I remember a team from Tel Aviv, Israel. Like they try to sign you like right there, right? And I'm from New York Mills, New York. I was raised in a Polish Catholic parish, and they're like, call your mother, see if you got any Jewish in you, see if you got. So I call my mom, and I'm like, Mom, do we have any kind of heritage of Jewish? And she goes. She said something in Polish to me. I said, that's the answer. So that didn't happen. But, I could have went to Panama, but that was when was his Noriega, the crazy stuff was going on there.
Yeah.
But anyways, that's when the Atlanta Hawks, I thought, were on to me because Kevin Lockery was their first coach. I had a really good camp. We didn't lose a game. I had a really good game against Frankie Johnson, and the other guard that I played with was a guard named Charlie Witt, who went to Holy Cross. And Charlie got drafted by, at the time, the Washington Bullets. He spent like 4 years with him. He was like a 6'5", 6'6", skinny guard. And him and I just played really, really well together. And he was kind of a version of Scott Franco, but, times 100 in speed. So he'd always beat his man down the court. I'd pitch it to him. He'd make layups or whatever. Anyway, so that's when I got, on some radars of some teams. And I just can remember Jerry calling me the day before the draft. He says, I think Derek's going to go in the 9th or 10th round. I don't know who, but he said, I got a call from one of the New Jersey assistants. And Larry Brown was going to New Jersey. from UCLA. It was going to be his first year in the NBA, and and coach said, yeah, they want to take you in the 10th round. You know, you feel pretty, and I'm psyched, right? And draft comes, nothing going. I get a call from Jerry the next day, and he says, yeah, Larry Brown, you know, as a goof or a gesture or whatever, they drafted Vic Sasson from UCLA in that round that the assistant told Jerry they were going to draft me, and Vic Sasson was the team manager.
What?
Oh my God.
Yeah,
What?
look it up. Google Vic Sasson, and it'll say NBA draft, and you'll Google him. It'll the position and all that. It says team manager, and yeah. So that was quite the. Now it's kind of funny, but but
And
yeah.
so let me jump in. So when the McNeese State was in the tournament there a couple months ago, was that bringing some memories back to you, because their manager got an NIL deal and he was getting all this attention?
Oh yeah. I remember. Yeah, I mean,
like they weren't even. I don't even know. The players on the team, their names weren't nearly mentioned as much as the manager was.
Yeah, well, a lot of that is the state of today, and I don't know how you guys feel, but college, was, even though you knew, teams. Well, I mean, you can make the argument, Jerry Wells started nil back in 70, 78, 79. I mean, little stuff, but you knew teams would, doing some things, but not to the extent where you're coming out of high school and you're basing your decision not on a major or something you want to pursue academically, but who's going to pay you the more money. There's nothing pure anymore. So I mean, we're not digressing into today, but I mean, I find you can't follow a team anymore because it changes every year, and then you go, like, for your money, you're gonna go see the real pros, or you're gonna go see, these are employees of the school. Like, it's just so, and I don't think you can get the genie back in the bottle. I really, really don't. And it's unfortunate. And I think they could have, I don't think it was a big fix. I think you could allow, somebody to have your jersey sold, but to pay somebody. I mean, you go up 95 here. I don't know if you see it, Pete, but the Florida Gators have a fund, donate to the collective, I think it's called, and
Yep.
they use that money to pay pay athletes to come. It's just really, really out of control. And look what happened to Tobin, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, it's just, and as like, if you're an alum, like, how can you stay with that program? You want to see kids, at least a couple years, right? And the traditions and all that stuff. I really fear, college athletics has lost its way in a big way, and I just don't know if they can come back in any sensible form.
Well, and you look at some of the coaches. There's several coaches that were, now granted they were kind of nearing the end of their career, and not just basketball. All college sports. These coaches that have left because they're like, this is broken.
Yeah, I love this argument. Well, coaches can leave. They recruited a kid. I think you can build in, the NCAA can step in and say, well, the coach has to wait a year to coach another school, right? But last I thought, the coach was an employee, right? A student athlete is an employee of a school, but now they are. Like, it's just, I really don't like it, to be honest with you. I can't get behind, my son the last 2 years went to University of Miami, so we all got into Miami football, Hurricanes, and I guess it gives you an opportunity. And by the way, I mean, there's some parallel tracks with Potsdam State basketball and University of Miami Hurricane football, how they've been dormant, after years of, at the top. And, but, overnight they bring in this guy, they bring in that guy. And yeah, it's cool and all that. But when you start getting to think of it, they have a whole new team this year. Like, it's just, for me, it's very hard to get behind and stick with it.
Well, it happened.
But, yeah.
It happened to the Seminoles down here too. Just from one season to the next, it happened with Seminoles, and then the Gators. It's like they didn't play like this last year, and here they are winning national championship now. So I agree with you to a certain extent, Ed. I mean, there was a lot of money being filtered through the college ranks, and it's all the colleges are making buku bucks on the back of these kids. So I unfortunately, this was coming. You had to see it coming at some point, but
you have a corporation that the executive team and so forth. You get your employee base, and they get a salary or whatever. It's let me and this is an accurate statement. And I never thought I would say this. The NBA, the NFL, Major League Baseball is more regulated than college athletics. I mean, think about that. It's just ridiculous. And nobody's going to college to play a sport because they have their academic program they want. So at what point, it's kind of like the NBA. I mean, these young kids, the one and dones, that's where it started, right? With the Caliparis and so forth. But, you got pros that are 20, 21, and they got all the talent in the world, but you watch them play and you just shake your head. Like the quality of the game, it's unwatchable. Did anybody see that game the other night? The Celtics and I know Pete, you did it, right?
Yeah, I did bits and pieces. I'm not a big NBA fan anymore, to be honest with you, but I totally.
But it's more regulated than college. Like there's no, Carson Beck. All right, Miami paid him $8 million, so he's not going to stay at Georgia. They're paying him $4 million, right? There's no, he's contractually not obligated. But if you sign a contract in the NBA, you got to at least stay the course, right, or sit out or whatever. But I don't know what direction it's going to go in. I really don't. I just think they have to put guardrails around it, and they have to have some sense of. They have to have some kind of penalty. The transfer portal as well. Like you can't go to 4 schools. Did you see Baylor? Their they got nobody coming back.
Yeah.
I mean, how as an alumni, how do you look forward to something? I guess is my point.
Right.
And these are just my views. I'm just really disheartened by the way college athletics, because that was, whether or not you believed it, there was like a purity thing about it. College is, amateur sports. It's no longer there, but So what else we got here?
Well, here, hey, Eddie, I got to show you something here, because I knew you were coming on, and I kind of friended you on Facebook, and I know that you like to post your disagreements with the NBA. So, but I'm presently reading this book. I don't know if it'll come through. When the game was war. This is about the 87-88 season.
The Pistons and all that.
That was the year the Pistons finally beat the Celtics, went to the finals, and lost to Magic and the Lakers. But as a kid growing, I was just graduating from high school. I would have been a freshman that year in college. That was prime NBA. That was basketball. You couldn't wait to watch NBA playoff basketball at that time.
Well,
yep.
It was
CBS
entertaining
on the weekends.
I mean, and to the NBA's credit, I don't know if what's his name, Silver would take credit or not, but there are some teams. I mean, Ricky Carlisle's team. I mean, the physicality of the 80s and 90s. I'm slightly seeing that.
Yeah.
But then you turn on the Knicks Celtics the other night, and there's 97 threes.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife has been on. We got Hard Rock Bet down here, and she's been on a roll winning these NBA games, and she won like 5 playoff games in a row, and she had the Celtics -9, and they're up by 20, and we're watching this thing, and my wife is saying like, "What is going on here?" I mean, they literally just stand outside the 3, and maybe there's a slight screen outside the 3, but they're jacking up shots. It was amazing to see. And then as good and great as Jalen Brunson is, I mean, is it entertaining watching them dribble the ball for 15 to 18 seconds off the 24-second clock? And everybody's standing around, and, you know, it's the dribble drive thing and all that. And, you know, it's just not entertaining to watch. You know, here's the other thing too. And here's a fact. The 3-point line came in, I believe, in 85, 86, right? In college. I think it was Stevie Babyar's last year. And so from that point on to now, I think that's 30 something years, 34, 30. I don't know. How many years is that? 30 years?
85 and 40 years.
40 years.
So since the 3-point line came into existence, all those seasons with the 3-point line at Potsdam State, the team averaged just under 70 points, 69.7 points a game. Our 4 years, we averaged 76.8 points a game without the 3-point line. I mean, that's, to me, that's shocking, because I could just if we played, the way we played, if you just put that line there, we're averaging, 3, 4 to 5 more points a game, which would have taken us in 80 or 80 points a game. I mean, it's just, think about that with Potsdam. I mean, they've went, since Jerry left, I think the 3 coaches have gone a combined 364 and 498. I mean, how do you think we feel, right? How many millions of dollars has that program lost with, people that have been successful that have seen this program? And, I know some stuff, I don't know if you guys know, but, there was a little bit of jealousy when Jerry left and the ADs took over. And you remember Mark Bouye? Mark was on the Bodacious Bears. He was the assistant. He was a student assistant that became an assistant. He was at the end of that Bodacious Bears. He lost his dad. I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yeah. I remember that.
Okay, so Mark left and got his master's and his doctorate. He was East Stroudsburg women's coach. He was the commissioner of the Washington, D.C. Catholic League, right, with the math and all that. When Jerry left, and Jerry was the AD, right? And that's another thing, too, that people don't talk about. He was a great AD. He had every team there's interest at heart. Like, people don't even mention that, but the hockey players and the basketball players and the coach, we all got along. Like, it was very, very supportive. The swim team, he did a phenomenal job. And then when he left, Mark they were looking to hire an athletic director, and Mark put his resume in and never got a call, never got an interview. And, I'm not putting this on the 3 coaches that went combined with that record, but what about the ADs? Like, you have this national legacy, and, it just wasn't focused. And I think there was a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, which, I know some things, but, it's kind of really sad. On the upside, I met the president back in February here in Naples. Suzanne, I think, she seems like she's on board. And I offered some suggestions, but we'll see where that goes. But, I'm in real estate a little bit down here and do some business with some, wealthy people that buy on the ocean. And it's like you build a multi-million-dollar ocean home, and you build it, you sell it, you come back in 10 years, and it's not taken care of, and that's how a lot of us feel, um, about the program.
We feel the same way because we grew up to that era in the 70s and 80s going to those games where you had to get there a couple hours early just to walk up the ramp, and stand outside in the cold to watch you guys play. And it's not the same. I mean, they were standing on the baselines when you guys were playing. I remember that. We talk about that all the time when we talk to people. And like the newspapers that were held up and they were shaking, and then the shots that Witherspoon would take, they throw the plastic spoons out and the toilet paper. Well, they don't do any of that anymore, and they barely can get enough to pack one side anymore. It's really, really horrible where it's gone. It really is.
Yeah, I actually link on their games, and it's I mean, if sometimes there's 50 people there, it's pretty sad. And a lot of that was, Jerry. It's very simple. Jerry outworked everybody. I mean, his success, he just outworked everybody, from recruiting to game preparation. Like, we won the games in practice. He was that thorough, and he just outworked everybody. And he always wanted to learn. He's a big Dean Smith guy, big John Thompson guy. We replicated a lot of what they did. But he's relentless. I mean, think about it. What I said earlier today, since Stevie Babiar's, what was that? I don't know, 80 something. Not one Notre Dame player, I don't think, played at Potsdam. And 3 out of the 9 All-Americans came from Utica, Notre Dame. I mean, and it's a 2.5-hour drive. It's just, I just shake my head. And another thing too, I don't know if you know this though, but Derek and I, we nominated Steve Kamak to be in this year's Hall of Fame, and he didn't make. Listen, you can't. Here's the analogy: Yankees had the core 4, right? Or we had the core 5. We had Derek, myself, then we had Stan Cohen, Jerry, and Coach K. And Stan, I think Pat Donnelly said it best. He was like the whisperer, the dog whisperer, right? His knowledge and so forth. Jerry was, the alpha, and you needed somebody in between sometimes to match up against the alpha, and that was Steve Kamak. And we don't. Derek doesn't become the player. Steve developed Derek, and Steve was very much a part of the X and O's. And you would think Derek and I, with our recommendation, he didn't even make it into the 7 finalists. I mean, and to me, that is where they could have at least started to, do the right things to get the program on the right track. But that was very, again, that was very disheartening. Steve should be there. Of course, what he did at high school level and the Hall of Fames, that he's part of, and he is proof, so to speak. But Steve, we're all getting old. Steve should be there because he was as integral as anybody, during those days when we started to make that move to a national contender. Speaking of Hall of Fame, y'all know I turned down the New York State Basketball Hall of Fame, don't you?
No.
A lot of these local Hall of Fames are for profit, right? And there's really no criteria. But it just became a situation. The guy running it has a man crush on Mike Dean, and I couldn't make jokes. He was censoring my speech and calling, and my wife's like, "This guy's nuts. I'm not going," and it just wasn't worth it. It just wasn't worth it, man. But you just got to be careful with some of these, the motives of why these folks run these Hall of Fames. But did you guys remember seeing Mike Dean play, or were you guys too young?
He was a little bit before I got really interested in Potsdam basketball. So But I remember, seeing him at the as a little kid going to the Potsdam summer camp. I remember seeing him there.
Yeah, I'm good friends with Mike. He's a pretty intense guy.
Yeah, he is.
I don't know. Maybe this might have been a couple months ago. He runs a podcast. He runs the Adirondack Basketball. He's a Plattsburgh guy. What's the guy's name? He runs the Adirondack Basketball Camp. He gives out sneakers. He's like
Tom Lacey.
Yeah. So he posts a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And there was a tournament up in Plattsburgh or St. Lawrence or whatever every spring or something, like where I think it might have been for money or it was some tournament where really good basketball players from Plattsburgh. I don't know if Derek played in it, but I think it was you had to graduate. So somebody posted about that tournament, and that one year it was hosted at St. Lawrence, and it was after we won the national championship, right? And I think it was in mid to late April. And Dale Shackelford came up. We had a team that we were going to play. And long story short, we played. Mike was on the other team, and I don't remember the guy. He played at Plattsburgh. His last name was Baldwin, but they were talking about this tournament in a post, and they mentioned that time this Baldwin guy, who I don't know. He knows me. Maybe I don't know him because I never lost to Plattsburgh, right? I was 8-0 against Plattsburgh, but he makes a comment. Yeah, I was on Mike Dean's team, and he showed Ed Jacob who the real MVP of the SUNYAC was, and then he said, "So that was my revenge." And I vividly recall that game, and what I really recall is, that every night since we won the national championship, we were out partying in downtown Potsdam. And I remember that night we came from a frat party, Dale, myself, I think Derek, and we had drank all night, and we came right from the party to the court. And I'm like, okay, Mike got the best of me there, but I had no sleep or whatever. He took it like it was the 7th game of the NBA finals. And I'm like celebrating still from the 81 national championship. And I just, I hear that a lot, the comparison and all that. And you can't compare decades, but,
no.
As my father said, you're not entitled to your own facts. And you look at the Mount Rushmore of Potsdam basketball, you got to win a national champ. You got to be the man or one of the men. You got to be a 2-time All-American. And you got to play in at least 2 national championship finals. And you got to be in the top 3 of the 3 major categories: points, assists, or rebounds. There's only 2 people that have done that, and that's Derek and I.
There you go.
So that's how I'll answer it. And the other person I'd put, you got to put Leroy, because Leroy was 2-time Division III Player of the Year, and that goes for something. But he's outside of the top 5 and all that stuff. But people don't remember too, like Derek and I, we split the vote for National Player of the Year. I mean, if you think about that, and between us, my sophomore and junior year, I got SUNYAC Player of the Year, and his senior year, he got SUNYAC Player of the Year. I like to chide him. I say Dick Sowers from Albany called me up the day of voting and said, "Look, man, I was going to go with you, but you mind if I throw my vote to Derek?" Since I said, "No, go ahead, Coach Sowers." But I always rub that in his face. But I'll be seeing Derek soon.
Ed, man, this has been a quick hour, actually a little bit over, and I'm sure we could probably talk all night.
Hey, let me know if you guys want. I had mentioned to you, Pete. My neighbor is Lawrence Taylor's best friend, and he's over there all the time. And let me know if you want any of these guys. Greg Anthony, I play golf with. Jason Williams. I work out with Joe Girardi on Tuesdays and Saturdays, the Yankees guy. So anytime you guys want a guest like that, let me know. I could certainly ask him on your behalf.
We'd really appreciate that. And Ed, thanks for going through this hour and giving us memories again, because it's just bringing back all those memories we all grew up with back then, and we want to thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys, and I'll be following your show, and I don't know if you could see that ESJ Partners. We do real estate down here, so when I know you're down here, Pete, but the other two, no. I know you won't see let's see. Spring is July 3rd for you guys up north. Summer is July 4th, and fall is July 5th, right?
Pretty much, yes.
Actually, so I don't know if you guys are around, but July 12th, I think that's a Saturday. Derek, Steve Kamek, and I will be up there on behalf of the 78-79 team. So we'll be around, I'm sure, reminiscing. And yeah, if you guys are around, find us or reach out to me, or we can do whatever.
Definitely.
July 12th?
Definitely.
All right. And
are you coming in that day on the 12th?
I'm coming in. No, I'm coming in that Friday night.
Okay.
So my wife's family lives outside of Philly, so we'll fly there and spend a few days there, and I'll rent a car and drive up. But you guys visit South Florida, have relationships, let me know. Heat games. Big thing now is the Panthers. You think, it's about 81 right now where I am, and the summer humidity's starting to happen, but yeah, it's crazy how the team embraced the Panthers down here. So I don't know if you like hockey, but Marlins not so much. But
we're from hockey.
Anyways,
schools,
guys.
So yeah. All right, Ed, I want to
Hey, Pete,
thank you
one
again.
last.
Yeah.
Sure. Hey, Pete, one last thing. You want to have a discussion with my wife about the Karen Reed trial?
No. I think I post enough on that.
I think we know.
Oh my God.
She's innocent.
She's obsessed with that stuff.
She's innocent. And we'll just leave it at that. So
all right, guys.
Well, for Joey, Dave, and I, Ed, we want to thank you immensely for coming on, and we really appreciate you talking to us.
All right, guys. Good talking to you.
Thanks.
All right. That's going to be it here tonight on ESS, Empire State Sports, and the Wise Guy Sports Talk Show for Joey, Dave, myself, and Ed Jacob. Good night, everybody.